Hello YouTube, this is DVD Review Studios here, and today I'm going to be doing a review on the Star Wars Clone Wars miniseries. This is a short animated prequel created by Genndy Tartakovsky, who is the creator of animated shows such as Samurai Jack. And this miniseries debuted in 2003 and ended appropriately in 2005, of course setting up the events of Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith. And that's basically what this is. Volume 1 heavily follows up on the events of Star Wars Episode 2 Attack of the Clones, and Volume 2 nicely enters into the first sequence of Revenge of the Sith, which is quite interesting. But sadly I will say this, as far as it stands to what we have currently for Star Wars, this is no longer canon. This was in fact rejected in favour of the initial Clone Wars TV show from 2008, and I can honestly see why, because this is very drawn out, very intricate, and has some phenomenal storylines and great character-based arcs. Whereas this is very rushed, and although we do get to see a lot of what the characters do become, based on the events in this, and of course reinforcing what we do see in the actual theatrical movies, we really don't get much substance or story in either of these volumes, particularly in Volume 1, which I will discuss first of all. So this, like I said, is set just after the events of Episode 2, and it kind of builds on the character of Count Dooku, who was certainly an undersold character in Episode 2, and we see a little bit more about Anakin and his frustrations with the Jedi Order, and how he's basically just such a hothead. He's very arrogant about things, and that leads into how Dooku actually trains sort of the apprentice that is Asajj Ventress that we do see in the Clone Wars animated 3D show later on. But honestly, this certainly wasn't very good in terms of substance. It was just a lot of heavily drawn out action scenes, which, don't get me wrong, were beautifully crafted and very well animated and just look gorgeous with so much going on in the screen at once. But when you don't really have a story to follow up on that or really intrigue you, it's kind of difficult to stick with it, and that's certainly something I felt when watching this. But to be honest, apart from a couple of sort of minor, very, very minor story points that get heavily explored in Volume 2, there's not much going on with this. The story points that I will mention, there's this bizarre Kaleesh warrior that just basically gets sliced up and killed. We have Count Dooku, kinda sorta, like I said, training Asajj Ventress, and then right at the end, a couple of Jedi like Ki-Adi-Mundi and Shakti are in danger, and then all of a sudden Grievous comes in and makes the danger even worse, when a droid army is literally surrounding those characters, including characters such as Mace Windu, for example. And overall it's quite interesting, especially the little final duel between Asajj Ventress and Anakin, which is the payoff of her training. And overall it's not exactly that bad, it's just I kind of expected a little bit more, but that of course brings us to Volume 2. Where things certainly do pick up. The beginning sort of 15 minutes is set just after what we saw in Volume 1, and then Anakin becomes knighted as a Jedi Knight, and that spurs things onwards to get a lot closer to Star Wars Episode 3, and so we see some interesting plot points, including General Grievous being trained by Count Dooku at the very end of this. We finally get the reveal of why Grievous has that awful cough in Episode 3, and that's because Mace Windu literally crushes his chest, and that's actually quite an interesting scene despite it being so short. And yeah, overall I think this is very interesting to say the least for how it's animated and how quickly it can tell a story compared to what we had in Volume 1. And so the main story with this is several Jedi trying to protect Chancellor Palpatine, and so Palpatine eventually does get kidnapped, of course, as we see him in the beginning of Episode 3, he's kidnapped by General Grievous, and the sort of B-plot is basically just to keep Anakin and Obi-Wan away from Coruscant, and so we see Anakin go on a personal journey, which kinda sorta reveals his fate of him becoming Darth Vader. And yeah, that's pretty much it for both volumes in terms of story and content. There's some interesting stuff in here. It's very well animated and certainly fits in some sort of way into the canon that we currently have now. I wouldn't completely reject this. It's very well animated, beautifully done. and I certainly liked the soundtrack, and the voice acting was quite good as well, even though it didn't exactly match what we have now in the Clone Wars. But yeah, overall, certainly an interesting little mini-movie, as I will call it. And yeah, let's just take a quick look at the special features. So some of these are kind of repeated on both discs. We have Bridging the Saga from Clone Wars to Revenge of the Sith, which kind of talks about all the intricate little story arcs and how they compare and how they actually go into episode 3. We have various trailers behind the scenes, commentaries, and then we have various art galleries, etc. And overall some interesting stuff, and I did have a look at some of the features on here. We have what I will say is one of the worst things ever made by LEGO, and that is the Revenge of the Brick trailer from LEGO, which is awful in terms of how they've actually animated the little LEGO figures. They just do not look right. They look as though their faces are melting. Audio commentary by Tartakovsky, galleries and concept art, etc. Another trailer for Revenge of the Sith, trailer for Battlefront 2, and stuff like that. You get the idea. And yeah, there's not exactly much going on with these two films, but I'd certainly recommend giving them at least one watch. The animation is definitely mesmerizing, to say the least. So that's my thoughts pretty much on the Clone Wars miniseries. I hope you enjoyed this video. Be sure to leave a like down below. Let me know in the comments if you have checked out this miniseries, and please subscribe down below for more.